Hello, everyone. Welcome to the special program Belt and Road Initiative in the Eyes of the Youth. I'm Niu Honglin. During the past 10 years, the Belt and Road Initiative started to grow from a visionary concept to a global trend for connectivity and development. It has changed the economies, changed people's lives, and changed how nations collaborate. And today, we'll have a great conversation from some young voices about remarkable changes they have witnessed during the past 10 years. Let's embark on a journey through the past decade, the present, and the future to get a sense about the potential and impact of the BRI through the eyes of the young participants. Joining today's discussion, we have Zoon Ahmed Khan, Research Fellow with Center for China and Globalization. Hello.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Great to have you here.
Likewise, it's a pleasure.
And also, we've got Huang Jiyuan, CGTN Opinion Editor.
Hello, thank you for having me too.
And we have someone from online. We have Giorgia Maset, Policy Officer in European and International Organizations. Hello, Giorgia.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. We can catch this show on all of the CGTN radio platforms, including our official website, international social media platforms, including Facebook, YouTube, X, the previous Twitter, and also you can find us on our domestic platforms, including Sina Weibo and WeChat video channels. Now it's time to grab your virtual compass and follow us to the heart of the discussion. First things first, what do you guys think of when you hear Belt and Road Initiative?
Should it be one word?
It can be one word, can be a sentence, or even a little story if you have one.
Okay, I would say if I had to make it precise, I think the first word that comes to my mind is connectivity. Obviously, and connectivity is maybe tangible, but also people, creating new linkages.
Actually really like the answer because we also published that question to online to a lot of netizens, and connectivity is definitely the word that pops out on a lot of the comments. So yes. And what about you, Jian?
I think for me, the word should be geopolitics, but there's a story behind it. I'm not stopping there. So when I first heard about it, I think I was in college or very early, and it was just after it was announced. Of course, back then it wasn't called Belt and Road. It was just a road at the very beginning of it. So my professor, we were in an international relations class, and my professor sort of just mentioned it offhand. He was talking about geopolitics, then something. Oh, then China had just announced this huge, ambitious project. So that's sort of my intro into the Belt and Road Initiative. It was about geopolitics. But now, a decade later, when we look at it retrospectively, it's sort of not all about geopolitics. There's a lot of other things involved in it. Like Zoon said, it's about connectivity, and there's economic development, and then you have there's an environmental aspect to it. There's a health aspect to it. I think we have AI aspect to it. So it keeps evolving. It's hard to define it in one word. And geopolitics is definitely not the word to define it.
Yeah, I'd like to add a bit to that because when I first read about the Belt and Road Initiative, it was called the One Belt, One Road. And this was in 2013. And that's the time I was a researcher in international relations, regional politics, geopolitics was my passion. But what I thought the first time when I heard about it and I read the speech, it was in Kazakhstan that this was announced, was that it is really responding to a growing need for many developing countries, including my own Pakistan. And the sentiment with which it was announced was also as if, there is a recognition, a realization that countries that have a desire to improve their infrastructure and the traditional institutions haven't been able to. Now China can come in and really fill that gap. So the first thing that came to my mind was problem solving. And in a way, what you also mentioned, it's been evolving because it's responding to different emerging challenges, problems, and gaps. So that's a very, I think we
That's a
agree
really
on
good
that.
answer. What about you, Georgia?
Well, for me, when I think about the Belt and Road Initiative, it's actually more than a word. I always think about how it truly is the project of the century. And I'm quoting President Xi Jinping in 2017 here. news coverage, media coverage always described the Belt and Road Initiative as the project of the century, and this massive, not only infrastructure project, which is at the moment the most expensive project in history. So I think that this helping countries escaping from extreme poverty, helping political stability can only be described as the project of the century.
Actually, we've got some very interesting response from online. We have someone saying connectivity comes into my mind, development comes into my mind, knowing the Chinese more comes into my mind, and knowing the world comes into my mind. I think is a really good answer. And also, we've got people saying the world is in harmony, people with a realization of understanding in true civilizations by having a peaceful and friendly free trading in the sense that no discrimination of nationality or sensationing. I really like as well. And also someone saying connections. I think it's a really cool idea, a modern take on an ancient thing. So definitely, because we know the Belt and Road Initiative actually represents 65% of the population, 40% of the GDP. So that is really, like Giorgia has said, a huge project. And actually, it's a huge initiative. But of course, we know in the past decade, more than 150 countries and over 30 international organizations have joined the Belt and Road Initiative in different forms. And also, it has established more than 3,000 cooperation projects and nearly $1 trillion investment. Even with all that being said, still there are people who don't necessarily understand the Belt and Road Initiative quite so much. They have misconceptions about it. They have some outdated understanding about it. And have you come across any?
Quite a few. So I think one of the first, because I've been researching Chinese foreign policy, BRI, so we would definitely, keep an eye on different kinds of coverage of the BRI. One of the first things that started happening, especially from European scholars who were studying China, who were interested in China's development and its impact, would say that it's just hard for us to understand what is BRI, what is OBOR. It is so loosely defined. And it is, it's nothing like, people want something crystal clear, like the Marshall Plan, right? That was much more easy to comprehend. Okay, these are the exact limitations and focuses. But the BRI is a concept. It's a vision. And when we say initiative, it's basically, China having bilateral conversations with host countries, and they mutually decide how exactly the BRI will manifest in those countries. So it was interesting to me. I mentioned this because the very flexibility of the BRI is something that developing countries appreciate because they have been exhausted. They are sick of many developed countries coming in and saying, this is what you need, and we will tell you exactly what you need.
To do, yeah.
And that flexibility is also one of the reasons that some developed people from developed countries or who are accustomed or appreciate that brand of, economic cooperation, they find it difficult to, even understand what they find it hard to categorize the BRI. So that's one misunderstanding, that it's flexibility and it's receptivity, right? So you have the BRI, you have GDI, GCI, GSI, you have a health corridor. There's so much technological transfer. We can keep on talking about how far this concept has come, but that very flexibility is something which has been misunderstood.
I think that is a really good point. I've heard a way of describing it, saying that the Belt and Road Initiative is kind of like water. It is with a lot of strength, but it can come in any shape and form. And it actually can come in shape and form depending on the container, which is basically for different countries, it can be different. So it can help you in the form of water. It's soft, it's resilient, but it's powerful. I like that. Yeah, right. It's a beautiful metaphor. What about you, Jiyuan? What have you come across?
I just want to add on to that because I think, as you said, it's loosely defined. So I think that's one of the problems why it has been so geopolitically focused by the West, because that's an easy concept to put onto this. I mean, like they always said, there's a debt trap aspect to it. I think the popular term now is loan to own. You loan somebody money and they cannot pay it back, so you own them. I don't know. There's some sort of these weird dynamics that they say. And with geopolitics put on that, they sort of they can play up this sort of a China is big and it's threatening, and they are using this to export their influences and their ideologies. But I do think that that's just one way to describe it. With this kind of a international endeavor, you are bound to expand your influence. That's undisputable, because you are simply by the fact that you're working with others. It's about what you are working for. I mean, I don't think that there's any military aspect to it. We don't see anything about a military harbor or something like that written into any of the documents published so far. And also, let's be honest, building roads are not exactly a sexy topic politically. It's sort of, it's just building roads. So I think that's one of the misconception, or I should say conjured up conceptions about the Belt and Road Initiative, is that it's really about security, it's about geopolitics, it's about great power conflicts. But
it's not.
But it's not. I mean,
even if it is, it's not necessarily negative,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
You always inspire me to speak out of turn. But I have to add to that, because one of the differences between the world of 2013 and the world today is that you do hear more perspectives from developing countries. And I can say that, 10, 20 years ago, the analysis of global development, the dominant analysis was coming from a Eurocentric perspective. And today, it's increasingly, I would say, democratized. More developing countries are expressing their views. Developing countries thought, okay, this is the first time in decades that one of us is playing a leadership role. China has been a developing country. We all inspired from the Bandung spirit decades ago. These developing countries did not become independent nations to be dominated by another country. And so, when they see China, and even if China has more influence, that influence is not seen as necessarily a bad thing at all. It's inevitable. Any country with the ability will end up having influence. And the focus, so I think it's actually interesting that 10 years ago, that perspective that, okay, this is just, China's way to dominate others. But now 10 years on, we see more developing countries talking about, this is what we need. China at least does definitely respect our agency. And yes, we've had situations where there were projects that were not as profitable as we would have wanted them to be, but that's a learning curve. And the success will be determined over the decades to come.
Yes.
It's not like a short-term
concept. That is a good point. And also, we'd like to hear someone from not exactly from the perspective from a European side, but more like, Giorgia, hi, you're online. What are some misconceptions you encountered? Because I believe you do also have some research experience in this, let's say, in regard to this topic, and you are exposed to a lot of European ideas. So give us your take.
I wanted only to add to these very interesting points that have just been made. But through my research, I've written my master's dissertation in China's engagement in the Mediterranean, and especially in Tunisia and Italy, in the light also of the Belt and Road Initiative. I have come across many prejudice and also misconceptions about the Belt and Road Initiative, and also China's influence in general, especially from a European side. I think that this is really important, because this lack of clarity that is the Belt and Road Initiative, that makes it so flexible, so adaptable, is bringing some mistrust from a European level towards the Belt and Road Initiative. From a Maghreb point of view, and also the MENA region, I think that it's not the same view. They don't have the same view, because there's, as you mentioned before, this China is helping other countries go through this developing process China went through 30 years ago. So of course they are acting as a leader, as someone who just went through the same exact process in order to help countries escape from extreme poverty and really help them. It is also important to say how since the year 2019, the Chinese government has truly been listening to these critiques from the West, and, well, putting some anti-corruption mechanisms and more clarity towards its intentions in the future, even though it's not possible because the Belt and Road Initiative is changing, is adapting, even adapting itself to countries' needs and specific needs of their country. So it's impossible to know what 10 years it would look like, but I think that this is what Europe needs at the moment.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. And also, I don't know if you have come across this concept of China being a country. People give it a nickname as a infrastructure fanatics because we're really good at building roads and building ports. And actually, between the year 2008 to 2019, China has built more than 5,000 kilometers of railway, and half of that is high-speed railway. That means every minute, if we just divide that by minutes, every minute 1 meter of railway is slowly or steadily growing in the world, and it's built by China. And that is, in my opinion, quite impressive. So we are really good at doing that thing, and we are expanding that ability or trying to help other countries with that ability as well. So there have been and there are still a lot of infrastructure related to the Belt and Road Initiative. Have you personally witnessed any or have any experience related to that?
Okay.
Do you want to start?
You can start because I
Okay.
always speak after you.
I just because I travel a lot within China, not necessarily to the partner countries, but within China, I think we do have this kind of infrastructure. I won't say fanatic, but we do have a love for it. We've built a lot
we
of
do.
roads and tunnels, and I do think that I think this ties back to the misconception thing. I think because building roads and building tunnels are sort of like, you don't think of it every day. I mean, once it's there, you don't think, okay, we now have this great condition,
like
this
air.
road. Yeah, it's
Don't
like
notice
air.
it much.
Yeah, but it's also the things that's most valuable to any kind of development because it builds up connectivity even within that region. So my point is, it's hard to mention what that gets you. I mean, it's even if we're talking about education, for like if we build a road between these two regions, we might connect the school in one region to another region so that the children of these places can enjoy a good education. But how do you measure that? It's hard to measure. We cannot measure it in GDP, at least not in several years. It usually takes a very long time for those benefits to really manifest themselves. So I think for infrastructure, it's an investment in the future. It's not necessarily something that's gonna have an impact in the near future sense. So that's what I think we need to take into account when we talk about the Belt and Road Initiative. We're 10 years in. It's still evolving, and maybe for the next 10 years we will still see many of the same things going on. We're still building roads, digging tunnels, and there might not be a great change, but that's going to come someday, maybe in 50 years.
Yeah.
I would say that it's like breathing air when you have it, and when you don't have it, you can't breathe. So, for example, I will give Pakistan's example because back in 2008, 9, up until 2014, we had in our biggest cities, we would call it load shedding, 12 to 14 hours without electricity. And this is the main bigger cities. I'm talking Lahore, Islamabad, Karachi. Smaller villages, etc., even less than that. We desperately needed energy infrastructure to be upgraded. Transportation infrastructure, the same. We had no public transport system in cities that are 20 million people like Karachi, or almost 15 million like Lahore. And our overall, highway network that was connecting the entire country, Pakistan did have in the 90s a very good investment in our motorway, which upgraded, but we needed to further upgrade that. We didn't have the resources to. We wanted to develop the port of Gwadar for decades. And at that time, we had a Singaporean company, but somehow they did not see it as a financially feasible investment. Long story short, I mean, this is a country that is deindustrializing for years. And then in 2015, the first phase of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor was announced. It was predominantly energy infrastructure, railway, transport infrastructure, special economic zones allocated, and the port of Gwadar. And I can tell you that, the moment this was announced, people in Pakistan, it was a sentiment that is hard to describe unless you felt it. Like, it was just unbelievable that we've been literally begging even different organizations, different financial, institutions that are responsible for infrastructure development to come in, but they saw Pakistan is too unsafe or unviable. But that CPEC investment was transformative. And of course, 10 years down the road, now we are energy sufficient. We have public transport in major cities, but the port of Gwadar is operational. And it has changed the prerequisites for further industrialization for Pakistan. It has changed the quality of life for many Pakistanis. We do have economic challenges, but CPEC has helped us reduce the negative impact of those challenges. So I would say, this was definitely my first exposure. And even if you look at other countries, like many African countries, as one platform to FOCAC, they're also able to multilateralize that transportation or that infrastructure vision. And that infrastructure is playing a positive role also today. Yes, it is not economically viable. I remember Ian Bremmer, a very famous analyst. I do respect, he's very sharp. But he said, even China's railway network is making losses right now. I was like, you cannot imagine the impact it has. It's not about the tickets people pay to sit on that line, but having that railway network is unleashing opportunities and so much more.
Yeah, totally.
So that is, China's mindset is one that resonates with developing countries because they have not been able to breathe for a while. And I think that definitely it's a prerequisite to building your economy further.
But what was traveling like before the roads were built?
No, there were roads,
for 20 million people. Without public transportation.
Just like random wagons. I don't know actually how people made it work. Frustrating. People get angry and unhappy, and they can't perform at work. Think about the effect it has. Yeah. So yes, it is. When you're at China's level, then of course, then it's gradual. Like you go to places like Huaping or small villages that just got their road upgraded, and all of a sudden they're able to export their mangoes to different cities and provinces, and they see, wow, this has upgraded life for them.
So. When I was doing the research, I do have some data. Actually, I know that as the end of 2022, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor has brought the direct investment of $25.4 billion to Pakistan, created a total of 236,000 job opportunities, and also contributed to the construction of 510 kilometers of high-speed railways, high-speed highways, actually, and 5,000 megawatts of electricity generation capacity, and an 886-kilometer national core transmission network. I have all these figures and data, but the picture you painted, makes me feel so sensational. The feeling is different. I think that's the power
it can
of
only
seeing
be felt.
it with your own eyes, and yes, it can only be felt.
I'll take 30 seconds, 45 seconds more. So in 2014, I was already working, and I think for most people I had like a good career going on, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'll go to Beijing to study. I want to understand China's geopolitical mindset, And I knew about Belt and Road, but who knew what it would become actually, right? And 2014, some people actually thought it wasn't a popular thing to do in Pakistan, by the way. We love China, but studying international relations in Beijing was something I hadn't come across someone doing that. And they were just a bit puzzled, but they were like, okay, it was confusing. But in April, when the projects were announced, everybody was like, wow, you're making the best. It just it was a coincidence, but it just changed the way people saw, wow, China has this capacity, China has a growing role to play, and that it changed people's lives.
Lovely.
And attitude towards
okay, I do not want to overlook this, but I need to talk to you, Giorgia. How about you? Have you noticed any cool infrastructure constructions or even business or trade projects you'd like to mention?
I would like, yeah, it is very important to differentiate developed countries and developing countries, because developing countries are eager to attract Chinese investment. And I think this is something that already developed countries are overlooking. I just wanted to give a very small example of something that I've been studying and going through. When I was in Tunisia, I've heard that, well, from a research, more than half of the population is willing to have China investing in their country. And this is a very important figure. It's really important. And I wanted to give the example in the light of the Belt and Road Initiative. A hospital has been built. It's a very local and small example, but still, I think it's really important. The hospital of Sfax, which has more than 300 beds, and this has changed people's lives truly. Having more employment, having a hospital to go to, a functioning hospital, which is not something to be overlooking, not to mention the building also of railways, highways, bridges, and ports, which, as said, it's truly changing people's lives in developing nations, which is something that, coming from an already developed nation, we don't truly understand what it is like and how it's really changing people's lives.
Yes, that is a very good point. And one thing I like to mention here is I think this is a topic that young people pay much more attention to nowadays. That is green development, because we are encountering a lot of climate extreme situations, and green development, sustainable development has become a very interesting and important focus. So, do you think the Belt and Road Initiative has something to do with green development?
Well, I definitely believe so, because I think there is hardly any country that have get rid of this sort of development path, which is once you start to industrialize, there's inevitably there will be pollution, and then gradually, once you become very industrialized, you can reduce that pollution with advanced technologies and so on. And the same goes with infrastructure building. I mean, you're building roads and digging tunnels, so there will be some kind of a pollution there. And China has been doing this for decades now, so the technology is quite advanced. So if China can help these countries and export these technologies out, or at least help them to do it, then we can sort of reduce the cost of it, the cost to the environment, the cost to the climate. So yeah, it's definitely helpful.
Giorgia, I'm going to go to you this time first. Any green development approaches?
Yes, it is really important, especially for, well, the moment we're living in. And once a country is going through the industrial project, it's important to take into consideration green development. And I think that the Belt and Road Initiative has this responsibility to actually, how it is already doing, putting eco-friendly financial support, also having an international cooperation on environmental standards. The Belt and Road Initiative is also paying much attention, and this is something that it's truly important to me, to biodiversity, to actually protect biodiversity in, well, different countries, and having a relationship with the country in order to establish eco-friendly cooperations, and really taking this eco-friendly cooperation at the next level, which I think it's one of the responsibilities of the Belt and Road Initiative.
The reason I direct the question to you is because I've got a really good example here. That is actually thousands of products, including solar panels, arrive in Madrid through China Railway Express from Yiwu in eastern China. And China produces the overwhelming majority of the world's supply of solar panels. And Sun Dredge to Spain has used them to turn itself into one of the biggest solar power producers in Europe. So we're sending off batteries, electric batteries, and we're sending off solar panels, and also we are trying to help people in across the globe to use this new energy. And I think that is a very important part. And for the initiative itself, actually in 2019, the BRI International Green Development Coalition was officially established. There is also a BRI Environmental Big Data Platform. I went on that platform and take a look, and there are a lot of different technologies, and you can actually utilize some of the technology if you want. You can consult, you can collaborate with other enterprises, and find it really fun.
Yeah, no, it's been I think I'll also add a bit to that. A lot of developing countries are actually not big polluters. And they would say, you can't think of that the environment on an empty stomach, right? That's the truth, So I think really when you talk about 2013, 14, 15, like Pakistan is one of the lowest polluters. The African continent is also one of the lowest polluters, but they are affected by climate change increasingly. In 2015 and 16, the first phase of energy projects was mostly not renewables in Pakistan, right? And I remember at that time, many investors would say, well, people are only willing to invest in non-renewables. And then technology started improving, mainly because of China. 2017, Chinese scholars, Chinese scientists were actually initiating different conferences and sessions to educate, to help developing country decision makers also think about a transition, a greener transition. And that's when the initiatives, the platforms you mentioned also come up. Now it's definitely because of Chinese investment in green energy and technologies that transition towards greener infrastructure development is becoming possible for developing countries. So it's definitely contributing the most to the mindset shift in many global south countries.
Thank you. That is a good answer. And also covered some pretty solid and serious grounds. Let's move on to a relatively lighter and happier topic. That is, if you get to choose, let's say, hop on a magical BRI initiated railway or a BRI initiated, let's call it a fantasy journey, what are some places you'd like to go? What are some hidden gems you'd like to discover, Jiyuan?
Definitely, for me, it's Turkey.
Turkey, why? Well, no offense to Turkey, I love Turkey, I'd love
Why
to go
Turkey?
as well, but why Turkey?
Why not Pakistan?
Yeah, why not Pakistan? Turkey.
Because I think Turkey has always been a very fascinating place. It sits on this sort of bridge between Middle East and Europe, and I mean, historically, it's been there's been empire, there's been wars, there's been great culture and great religious buildings. I mean, it's sort of this kind of a mixture of everything in that region. So I've always wanted to visit that place.
So how about you, Georgia?
Well, I would say Turkey as well, and in particular Istanbul, if I could choose. Actually, I was writing my dissertation on the Belt and Road Initiative in Istanbul, and when I was there, for a couple of months, I really felt like Istanbul as a city, but not also. I could also talk about Venice, which is my home city where I grew up in. I think it stands at the crossroad of two continents, the crossroad of so many different nationalities, religions, political views. I think that as a city, also as a country, Turkey, of course, it really encompasses what the Belt and Road Initiative is, which is also the connection of people, the people-to-people exchange. And when I was there, I truly felt myself like in the spirit of the Belt and Road Initiative. I would say Venice as well, because of my, of course, love for it. But at the same time, well, the travels of Marco Polo helped initiate the original Silk Road more than 700 years ago and create a relationship between Italy and China, but especially Europe and China. So I would say Istanbul and Venice.
So what is going
For
to
me?
be your...
No, actually, I love Turkey. I have to go. But I wouldn't choose Turkey. I would say two places. One I will mention, I would love to go through Xinjiang to Pakistan, but that's something I'll definitely do. One would be Laos. I think that firstly it's a new infrastructure, but I've been wanting to go to Laos for years. It's a country that has faced a lot in its history, and it's very beautiful, and the people and the culture is something that I'm intrigued by. So I would love to. And the other would be the African continent, because I think there's so much new infrastructure and railway networks being built. You could do a whole Africa tour on Belt and Road, railway networks. That's something I would love.
I'd like to share my answer as well. Mine is like, I'm much more ambitious. I actually like to hop on the train, hop on the China Express Railway and just experience the whole thing from the Chinese city to a European city. And I feel like being on the train, I'll be able to see the view. I'll be able to see how the goods are transported. And actually, China and 52 coal-building Belt and Road countries have achieved visa-free or visa on arrival agreements with direct flights applies to 45 countries along the route, making overseas travel much, much more convenient. And I would say traveling is definitely one thing that you want to mention when you talk about culture and when you talk about exposing yourself to different civilizations. So the culture aspect of BRI and experience there.
My experience comes mostly from my work, because I'm currently working with 4 different local teams in 4 different countries,
Wow.
filming a docu-series on the Belt and Road Initiative. We take it from a kind of a human, personal kind of a view. So I definitely think that because this project exists and I get to do this and I get to communicate with people from 4 different countries, even if we haven't met face to face. But through this kind of communication, I think I get to understand more of how they work, how they behave, and they get to understand more how we in China works and how we behave. I mean, of course, there are frictions sometimes. It's sort of
Inevitable.
comes with the territory.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but I really do think that even those small things helps me to understand the impact of Belt and Road Initiative. Aside from the stories that we're shooting, mainly my experience with the crews, it's been amazing. Yeah.
Any experiences with culture? I think, automatic. First of all, I think the way I have to mention even your media, because the way you are covering different parts of the world is breaking stereotypes. And that is a very important service, to it's a game changer for many regions that are developing. The coverage that you're doing on the African continent is much more about how dynamic it is, how much creativity young people from the continent have, and etc., etc. So firstly, I think culture is like people are their culture. And the Belt and Road Initiative, through better media coverage, through trade, through different students and professionals coming from other parts of the world to China and vice versa, they're able to, have those cultural interactions that create further incentives for cooperation. So for me, I think I've just seen exponentially how much, to a greater extent, Chinese youth are exposed to different cultures in different parts of the world. They're interested in, the holidays of another country or artifacts from another country. They're so much more well-read. And that is enabling, it's mobilizing them to become more inquisitive and explore parts of the world that were traditionally less understood. So I think that that's just happening exponentially.
Because when I was a kid, I feel like when it comes to overseas movies from other countries, I would think about movies from the United States, from the United Kingdom, and that's basically it. When I was a kid, again, I was not exposed to many movies and TV shows and reality shows from other countries.
Yeah.
But because of the Belt and Road Initiative, more and more countries started to realize we can talk to each other.
Yeah.
We can collaborate under this framework, under this initiative. And for example, actually this June, the Belt and Road Film Week of the 25th Shanghai International Film Festival was held, and filmmakers from different countries, especially the countries along the Belt and Road, came together to witness the announcement of the awards and of many things, and that is something that you didn't expect or didn't thought that would happen.
It's like affirmative
10 years
action.
ago.
It is. I think so. No, I don't know if it's a bad word. I think the BRI is affirmative action. Yeah, one of the first things I would think about Orientalism, and the Muslim world or whatever, we've been misunderstood for a while. And then, the Belt and Road is all of a sudden creating incentives for individuals to understand other parts of the world that are less understood. So, yeah, it's this festival is changing people's mindsets,
And it's not only this. A lot of different art galleries and painting contests. It's just a lot of theme about the Belt and Road. And I think it's a really great platform. And on top of culture activities, there are also education. That is a very important part. So, Georgia, I was wondering, are you, let's say, have you witnessed any education-related projects with the Belt and Road as playing a part in it?
Yeah, I think that this is a really interesting and important question. I am unluckily one of the generation that was too young when the Belt and Road Initiative actually started. So I couldn't really see the changes in the education system for me. But I think that I am one of those young Italians that in light of the Belt and Road Initiative really became interested in China, in Chinese language, learning Mandarin, and having this as an opportunity for travel, for work, and also for education. Many universities, including the one that I attended, offer double degrees with Chinese counterparts, and also some study programs in order to improve Italian education. Something that I have witnessed, for example, in Tunisia, is this, at a very nascent phase, this improvement in education, in cultural exchanges between Tunisian students and Chinese students. Tunisian students and also, not North African students in general, have opportunities to go to China to continue their education with all paid by the government. And I think that this is a great opportunity, a great educational opportunity for them. And this exchange of cultures, it's what the Belt and Road really is. The same thing I have witnessed, for example, in Senegal. That is a country, when I was there this April, China has invested in infrastructure that has really changed people's lives. For this reason, I saw my young fellow classmates. They knew how to talk Chinese, they knew how to speak Mandarin, and I think that this curiosity towards Chinese language, towards Chinese culture, it's something that comes with the Belt and Road Initiative, and it's something so great that allows them to travel to China to pursue their education and have this double vision. And it's something that is changing our world. It's something that I truly believe in. And I would have loved to be a young student at this moment and have this opportunity to travel and to pursue my education.
I'm curious, do you speak Chinese, even if several sentences?
A little bit.
Can you introduce yourself in Chinese?
我叫 Giorgia， 我是意大利人。
That is lovely. 我叫 Georgia. 我是意大利人. I love it. I was wondering, what about you, Zoon? Do you have any experience of education, or also learning Chinese?
Yeah, a little bit learning Chinese, not too much. I guilty, but I'll actually second completely what Giorgia said just now. People make the comparison how many hundreds of thousands, much more, the number of students from different countries that are coming to China, different provinces, and getting a higher education over here. It has increased exponentially over the last years. Just Pakistanis are almost 30,000 in China currently pursuing part-time or full-time programs. And this is a comparison that people make with the United States. Back in the 1950s and 60s, they were offering these kinds of scholarships, and then look at the kind of impact that makes. It is obviously, as Giorgia mentioned, more people understanding China, being familiar with the Chinese language, Chinese culture, etc. But it is also that influence coming in China, right? Like, there are so many these global villages, or these cultural days at different Chinese universities. They represent all continents, different perspectives. So many research institutes in all across China now have people from those countries helping them do the research. And now, 10 years on, after BRI, CPEC projects have been ongoing, you have people in major ministries who spent 4 to 5 years in China getting their education. Another aspect, very important, is vocational education. It's not just higher education in universities and academics, but vocational education is something that China has done on a scale unfathomable otherwise in the world. And this is something that developing countries need. One of my first jobs, I was still a senior in Pakistan, was skills development program, and we were trying very hard to match the curriculum and also invest in the right, because it's very expensive to give technical education to your young people, and try to match that with the growing demands of the industry, and it was not working. It requires a lot of effort. So vocational education, TVET that we call, is a big priority for many countries along Belt and Road with China. And that's where, you're really making some major advancements as well.
That is a really good example. And actually, we do have a system called Luban workshops.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yes, it's established in 23 countries. And first established in 2016, the workshops have offered degree education to more than 3,200 people and provided vocational training to more than 11,000 people, according to a report on this workshop's development. And a total of 49 vocational majors have been opened at the workshops, offering education for secondary vocational degree to postgraduate degree. And I think it goes back to the idea of having BRI working like water, because it's like it adapts to local countries' needs, and it helps the country to learn about China, and also helps the country to, like you said, have vocational education and also some other forms of education in local areas, right?
Yeah, I do believe that one of the things that I'm really interested in is to see how the BRI really improves the regional or within the country, the connectivity within the country, and particularly in education. Because as we know, many of the countries along the participating in the BRI is not necessarily have advanced conditions to provide really good education for everybody. So I think the Belt and Road Initiative, for example, as I mentioned, I'm doing a story, a docuseries. One of the stories is taking place in Nigeria, where we found this retired head teacher there. She had been a teacher for probably 3 decades or so. And because of the presence of the Belt and Road Initiative, they were able to build a local school. I think it was called China-Nigeria Friendship School. And she run the school for more than a decade, and now she passed the baton to her successors. And because of they have built this school so that there is a continuity there, students can keep coming rather than, teach a bit here and then move to other regions, teach there. So students in that region can all now come to the school and study in one place, and they can come one after another. So I think that's very crucial to provide a sense of continuity for the people on the ground in these countries.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. There's a similar example, Gwadar, one of the best schools in Balochistan, which is a big province of Pakistan, is the Gwadar Fakir Friendship School. It's built by the local community and the Chinese company developing the port. So yeah, such examples are spread all across different projects.
Yes.
Very important.
And I think to the stage, we can establish that the Belt and Road Initiative is not just about building roads, building infrastructures. It's more about helping local people,
building
communities, helping people all across, and also helping people, especially those relatively vulnerable groups. It's about empowerment. It's also very important to see that Belt and Road Initiative in certain occasions helped the youth to get the education they need, help women to get the job they want. And I believe you have certain experience in that realm.
I think it's also about the perspective. When I've seen Chinese companies, and I think Giorgia, like you would also back this, the company is not just doing charity for the community. They see the community as, having potential that is untapped. And they care, it does matter if that population, those 250,000 people in the Gwadar city, are they people whose, abilities are being channeled in a constructive direction. Like if these are fishermen and they have these broken boats, maybe we can together be better off as the Chinese community based here and the locals, if we are able to equip them with better resources. So in Pakistan, you have multiple examples. Just alone in Gwadar, they have invested in better quality trainings for fishermen, provided them better boats. They have helped the local manufacturers, value addition, get better licenses. Gwadar is green, which it never was. So agriculture initiatives and trainings for women. So women have these very important skills that are, maybe handicraft, etc., or others. So they've built community centers to further channelize that skill and make them more economically independent. In Pakistan, apart from Gwadar, even the school, it was built because girls had a very high dropout rate. And that's just one of many examples. Otherwise, we have women being financially independent now because of CPEC projects, working in offices in parts of the country where families did not feel safe sending their daughters to work. So these are the real stories that are inspiring people in a way that just thinking about a road can't.
Yeah, that is very inspiring indeed. And it has been 10 amazing years, and we can totally see the initiative still growing and evolving and helping more people. But I was wondering, what can we learn from the past 10 years? What are some lessons we can draw here? Georgia?
Well, I think that one of the first lessons we have to think, in this 10 years, almost 150 countries have signed an MOU with China regarding the Belt and Road Initiative. So I think that only this stands as a success and shows how it's improving day by day and how it has reached a really important stage. Also, the Belt and Road Initiative is all about flexibilities, how we say innovation, adaptability. And so I think that a very important lesson that we have to learn about it, it's how this flexibility really makes it the Belt and Road Initiative. And during these 10 years, there have been many challenges. Today, the Belt and Road Initiative is facing challenges from many points of views, of course. And I think we don't have to stop at these challenges, these particular challenges, but go with the flow and see where this will bring the Belt and Road Initiative in the future, and learn from these challenges, learn from all the steps in the way, and help improve this international cooperation in order for every country to have a better future, every signing country have a better future and face extreme poverty. So I think there are many lessons to be learned, but to go with the flow, this dynamic of the Belt and Road Initiative is one of the things that in these 10 years really made it the Belt and Road Initiative.
3 lessons. I completely agree with what Georgia said, but I'll add 3 lessons. I think number 1, think of the Belt and Road investment as part of your domestic plan. Have your own domestic plan.
Yes.
Have a sense, you can't just talk about agency as developing countries and then say, okay, now we're just gonna, everything's gonna happen because China has been successful, so China being involved here means automatic. You have to take ownership as developing countries.
Here, but you need to create your own container.
You need to make the container, absolutely. Number 2, the success of the Belt and Road for any individual country is not the quantity of investment, but the extent to which it can be utilized. So now we are aligning with SDGs. We're able to, so it's not just 8, 10, 12, an $8 billion investment could be much more successful than a $12 billion. Be smart. And thirdly, most important, think about the BRI as a region. That is going to have many more benefits for you as a country. So look at Central Asian countries are coming together and thinking how we can collectively have better investments. The African continent is. Every country should think about how we can work together with the region.
Yes, it's about community. It's about cooperate. Working
synergy.
Together, energy, putting the energy together.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, there are still certain obstacles, certain challenges we have to overcome. So do you pick up any challenges that you think worth mention, Yuan?
Too many. I think first and foremost, I'll just go back to what I said in the very beginning about the perception of it. I mean, one of the things that I think it's becoming weirder is that there's a sense that because China is doing this great big project, so its rivals need to have its own. I mean, I don't get that, because I think for Belt and Road Initiative, I think it's a classic liberal economics. China has this comparative advantage in building roads, in building infrastructure, so people are welcoming it in. People are more receptive to it. But there's this Build Back Better presented by U.S. President Joe Biden, and then there's this recent India to Europe, this corridor. I think there's a rush to repeating or replicating the Belt and Road Initiative, which is not necessarily helpful to the people, because there's a certain amount of roads that everybody needs. I mean, if we're talking about true common development, we can maybe say, okay, I'll focus on something and you focus on other infrastructure, because there are a lot of things that the developing world needs. instead of everybody going into the same thing and trying like outplay one another.
Yes.
I will add to that. I think it's okay if 10 different developed countries want to build infrastructure. We will never have enough infrastructure. That's my view. Okay. And I think, classic, like, people sitting in Washington would say, oh, unipolar world is stable. No, a multipolar world is
much
better for countries, developing countries, especially that are the majority. If you want to know something is better for the world, think what's better for the majority of the world, right? So I personally think, yes, PGI and B3W are actually symptoms of the growing importance of developing countries. This is what they want. Developing countries want infrastructure. Now, Europe and the US, and even though they had previously ignored, now they're coming and saying, okay, we also want to. Ideally, they shouldn't want to compete. They should want to work together. That would be perfect. But having this just means the developing countries are more important than they have been in a while. And that's a good thing. I think. Yeah, like it's okay. But I totally agree. Ideally,
I also
do what you can.
like
they
that
can't build
argument.
infrastructure in their own countries. So
I just don't think that
It's
the Belt and Road
counterproductive.
Initiative should be the reason why they want to do this. I mean, I
Yeah.
think for many of them, this is the reason that because China is focusing on this, so we need to focus on it. But everybody should be focusing on this, regardless of who did it first. So
Yes. So Georgia, how
Can I
about
hop in
you?
real quick?
Yes, go ahead, jump in.
I think this is so interesting because it has been perceived from the West, well, from when global getaway from a European perspective and Build Back Better World from a USA perspective have been launched. Well, I think that the goal here is missing because the goal is not to oppose China, even though this is what they are actually doing because they have been launched well after the Belt and Road Initiative, and in order to go against it, even though the Belt and Road Initiative goals is not to gain regional or world power, and this I think that is something that is not being truly perceived from the West, and this is the reason why this similar initiative in order to oppose the Belt and Road Initiative have been launched. But I think, as you mentioned, and I completely agree with, the goal here is to create a cooperation to help developing countries to build infrastructure and not to gain global dominance or have this evil mastermind plan that has been perceived as this from the West. And this is the reason why there are so many initiatives and with this aim.
That is a really good answer, and that is why I want to ask you the $1,000,000 question. Any suggestions, any innovative approach you'd like to suggest to the future development of the BRI?
Well, if I could just give one idea, which surely already exists, in order to fight against this mistrust and toward the Belt and Road Initiative, is maybe to have a already existing, maybe deeper community engagement and try to have more forums in order to spread awareness about the Belt and Road Initiative and not create some false narratives around it. So have these forums, open questions, really transparent way of presenting the Belt and Road Initiative in order for many people not to have the wrong image from media, from friends, or listening to it and having the wrong image about it. So I think that having these discussion forums with young people from communities could be a way to help, fight against misconceptions and lack of trust.
Anything else from you, Zoon?
I think I do completely agree. I think we need more forums. We have the summit, for example. If there's a yearly summit, that would be even better. I think there will be some who just want to, create misperceptions about the Belt and Road. And I think we should pay only that much attention to those, but instead be very receptive to what are the realities for people who are impacted by Belt and Road projects. And that's where, China is doing a lot. Like you also mentioned, different countries coverage. You have an understanding how people think. For developing countries, for host countries, I think they have a lot of work to do as well. Take more ownership, be more proactive, realize that, there's a lot you can learn from China's experience, but you have to study yourselves to make your experience successful. So that's very, very important now, 10 years on.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think the ownership and proactiveness from the partners is very crucial, because one of the things that I found from the docuseries that I'm making is that people Chinese investments or companies go into a region, they build this power station or a dam or something, and they employ local people to build it, and then local people take in the knowledge and the techniques of building it. So when that project is finished, when the station is commissioned now, then they move on to other projects, but the techniques and the skills and the experience, they stay with the local people. So the local people should really start to think about how they can go forward and take ownership of their country's own development and really be very active in building that. I mean, people always say that the Belt and Road Initiative is some sort of China's leading it. I mean, every country should be leading it in their own ways.
That is very well said. And I think if I have the chance to answer this question, I would say listen to the youth, because our young participants today have given so much really insightful ideas. And I believe we have a saying here in China. We say the future is the youth, because the future inevitably will be in hands of our generation, and we will try our very best to make the world a much better place, and hopefully BRI can continue to be a very important part of it. And as we wrap up this lovely, great conversation, we have journeyed through the past decade to the present and into the future of the Belt and Road Initiative. It's been a remarkable exploration of how this initiative is reshaping our world, and our young participants have provided very invaluable insights. The BRI is way more than just infrastructure. It's about empowerment, innovation, building bridges between nations, generations, and civilizations. And hopefully we will in the future have more talks here. And thank you all very much, and thank you Giorgia online for joining the conversation, and thank you guys for watching this show. If you'd like to watch the replay of it, you can search for BRI Youth Talks on all CGTN radio platforms, including our official website, our social media platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and X, the former Twitter, and also you can find us on Sina Weibo and video channel of WeChat. And stay with us for more inspiring conversation. Until then, keep the dialogue alive. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.